So in this video, I would like to pursue the following question. Where is King Arthur, or Arthur, in all this chaos associated with the Anglo-Saxon conquest? Because he originated there, if he ever existed. He was certainly a Brit, or Briton, a Celt, and not an Anglo-Saxon, although later on he became a great, was mythologized as an British, English king, something like that. But most certainly he wasn't that. And the problem being, although his origin is probably 6th century, that he was only first mentioned in around 900. And I would like to have a look at that. This is Nennius, pseudo-Nennius, probably not written by Nennius, but anyway, I mean, this text was associated with his name. And the Historia Britonum, the history of the Britons, 900, something like that. And sorry for introducing a bit of Latin here, but for those who have no Latin, no matter, I will explain, but here we go. Tunc Arthur pugnabat contra illos in illis diebus cum regibus Britonum, sed ipse dux erat bellorum. We have the translation here. Then Arthur fought against those, the Anglo-Saxons, in those days were the kings of the Britons, but he himself was a leader of the wars. Problem being here, and probably you haven't heard that before, but yes, Latin has a problem, although it is a very precise language, but it doesn't have any articles. So no distinction between definite and indefinite articles. So you cannot say, was he a king, for example, just one king among many, or the king. And since you have this here, then Arthur fought against the Anglo-Saxons with the kings of the Britons. He himself was the leader, only a leader, and so on. And this, of course, may produce some confusions. And probably those confusions were responsible for the development of the myth of King Arthur. Let's have a look at those in detail. I mean, we may translate the Latin, which I've just reiterated. Arthur was the leader of the wars. Arthur was a leader of the wars. Arthur was the leader of the kings. Arthur was a leader of the kings. Or Arthur was only a leader of wars. This would make him a general. But you see, however you translate that, concerning whether you put an article or not, or an indefinite article or a definite one, a different interpretation ensues. And so the most frequent interpretation is Arthur was the leader of the wars and of the kings. So he was the supreme kings among the British kings. All right. But however, I personally think this is a very unlikely interpretation here. I'm more tending to that here. Arthur fought together with the kings of the Britons, but he himself was only a leader of wars, which is, who is a general. Okay. So this is the most likely interpretation, because, I mean, if he had been the leader of the wars and of the kings, the supreme king, I mean, we would have known more about him before 900. Okay. And so if that is true, then Arthur, as the most important medieval king ever, this myth would be due to a false translation from the Latin. And we have this very often, okay? The things get misinterpreted in medieval times, mistranslated, but later on it sticks, and people adhere to it. So most likely Arthur, a general, a war hero who fought with the kings of the Britons, but wasn't a king himself. But that is very unimportant for literature. I mean, as long as people believe that he was the supreme king, he is the supreme king. Okay, so he appears in literary texts, first of all, as an epic hero, a hero who kills monsters at Mont Saint-Michel in France, giants even, who conquers half of Europe, even the Roman Empire, something like this, all of Scandinavia, what have you. These are the texts you have predominantly between 1000 and 1250. Okay, Arthur as the supreme European hero who, in a way, put an end even to the Roman Empire. But Arthur, as we know him predominantly today, I mean, he is even later, of even later origin, and you know these things. Yeah? Arthur, the sword in the stone, whoever is able to put it out is going to become king. I mean, you know the myth, of course. Yeah? Merlin, the sorcerer, all the knights of the Round Table, Gawain, Lancelot, Kay, and so on. Avalon, the myth of Avalon, where Arthur, after his death, is brought to by women, predominantly Morgan Le Fay, things like that. The Holy Grail. Only the perfect knight can achieve it, the Holy Grail. Sometimes Galahad, sometimes Parsifal. It's not very consistent. Courtly love. These things that the knights go out, particularly Lancelot, and rescue ladies and so on. Well, even commit adultery. Lancelot with his boss's wife, Guinevere. Wow. Which in the end destroys the Arthurian kingdom. All this is French. All this is of French origin. And we should know that. So the British subject matter of King Arthur is predominantly popularized by the French. And so we should ask ourselves, I mean, if Arthur General and so on is of Celtic origin, British origin, how did Arthur come from the British Isles to France? And become the predominant subject matter there. The thing is, Arthur, I haven't told you the truth. I mean, Arthur was mentioned before 900. At least references to a hero named Arthur in Welsh literature, Celtic. And this makes perfect sense. I mean, if Arthur was a Celt, I mean, the myth would be preserved in Wales or Cornwall, in those areas which were still very, very Celtic in those days. Some still are. You remember when I mentioned that a lot of British people, of Celtic origin, they fled to Brittany from the Anglo-Saxons. Beda gives us that, and so on. They had a dukedom there, Armorica, all right, and in a short period of time adopted the French language and preserved their own. So many of them were bilingual. Breton still spoken today, at least by a few elderly people. Okay. So thing is, I mean, the theory today is that the Arthurian myth came to France through a cultural contact which was still preserved between Wales, Cornwall, and the brothers and sisters on the other side of the channel in Brittany. So the Bretons as intermediaries between Celtic and French culture. And we know they had a lot of traveling minstrels who traveled through Europe and singing the great tales of King Arthur to those who spoke French, okay, which were many, many people in those days. The predominant language in Europe, at least Western Europe, in the Middle Ages. Okay, so this would be King Arthur. Let's turn a bit on. Britain in 700 is that a country very much divided into a Celtic part, which is still held by the Britons, and then an Anglo-Saxon part, which is more or less separated between the Angles and the Saxons. The Saxons south and the Angles in the north, except for the area around Kent and the Isle of Wight, which was the Jutes who occupied that. So this is the situation we have in around 700. Okay, and this is the thing which I would like to turn to in the next installment. The Christianization of England and how that came about, because those Anglo-Saxons were pagans. Okay, somebody must have Christianized them, and this we get in the next video. Okay.